Jan, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I was hoping you could help us understand the concept of fallacies.
The fallacies are a systematic form of deception using words, which is why it is so empowering to learn the various fallacies. It's like a virus scanner for your mind, allowing you to read between the lines.
So if literacy is a form of slavery until critical thinking is exercised by the reader, we also have to become familiar with these fallacies and to protect ourselves.
Exactly, Rich, but there's more to it than that. And in addition to identifying fallacies, you also need to be able to identify contradictory arguments which violate logic.
Now that we're aware of fallacies, it's all about learning how to spot them when it's revealed to you through corporate media, meant to change your behavior using less than factual means.
Unless, Rich, you want to be incompetent your whole life, it's a very good idea to have a system that will help you survive and thrive in this world. And I recommend your viewers read a study from Cornell University's Dr. David Dunning, which is Why People Fail to Recognize Their Own Incompetence.
Really? That sounds interesting. And it's probably a good idea to start to learn to recognize our own incompetence and how to learn for ourselves beyond that point. Jan, could you explain to me the different forms of self-learning, namely the autodidactic and the autodialectic learning processes?
Well, autodidactic is teaching yourself, and autodialectic is asking the right questions to learn things yourself.
So we've all got some learning to do in order to perform intellectual self-defense, including getting familiar with this list of fallacies to protect ourselves. Well, lastly, now that we're aware of the fallacies and the different types of learning that are out there, we need to reignite our curiosity and thus our self-learning patterns. In one word, could you explain how we lost this curiosity which leads us out of the dark?
In a single word, sure. Liberal.
Excuse me?
Liberal.
Where's that word come from?
Liberal is derived from the Latin word liber, which at that time represented both book and freedom.
So they understood books to be something which could be used to make yourself free of mind, cognitive liberty. That's pretty smart.
Well, it gets smarter, and the word liber is also where we get the place where books are stored at, where we go to learn, such as libraries. So liber is the root for the word library, and liberty meaning free.
It makes a lot of sense that the libraries are disappearing along with our freedom because we misunderstand this concept. So liberal actually means free, and then that would mean that the liberal education is about learning your way to freedom?
Not only does the word liberal mean free, but it means worthy of a free man, free from restraint, free in speech and action, free from narrow prejudice, open-minded, candid, free from bigotry, open to the reception of new ideas or proposals of reform. And what I'd like to do, Rich, is also include antonyms of the word liberal, which explain exactly what the opposite of a liberal is. And antonyms include uneducated, unintellectual, closed of heart, selfish, narrow, contracted, mean, small, fascist, racist, bigoted, homophobic, stingy, closed-minded, supportive of monarchies and slavery, against freedom of religious expression and speech, low in birth and mind, and therefore, since we're living in a free country with a constitution, it's anti-American to be against liberals. And not only that, but there's even a word for people who are against liberals, and that is known as liberticide, which is the destruction of civil liberties.
So it seems like we've been conditioned or programmed to purposely misunderstand the concept of the word liberal. And likewise, simultaneous to that, we've lost our liberties, our libraries, and our sense of freedom. And therein, the noble lie has empowered strategies like the Bush doctrine of preemption, using coercive military force to spread democracy. Lastly, while you have your OED out, Jan, could you summarize the definition of terrorism for me?
Now, the definition of terrorism means government by coercion or force.
So, the noble lie is a type of omission which takes away your free will, which is a type of force. So, The definition of terrorism being government by coercion of force used by a government who uses the noble lie, well, that gives us something to think about. Thanks, John. That goes a long way toward our understanding.
Thank you, Rich.
Warning, this ad may contain misleading and unfounded rhetoric. New Fallacy Be Gone Critical Thinking Spray.
Are you tired of soulless corporate advertising, shallow debates between puppet politicians, and the empty rhetoric of a ruling elite? Wishing that your opinions and the ideas of others actually made some kind of sense, instead of sounding like some bandwagon-hopping jingoistic nonsense? Looking to sound like your factual positions on the banking crisis are well thought out and articulate, rather than coming from an emotionally compromised bundle of tears and fears?
Then you need Fallacy Be Gone, the only critical thinking spray available in the world. Fallacy Be Gone destroys not 20, not 30, not even 40, but it obliterates these 42 fallacies. Fallacies like, ad hominem. I don't like what you're saying, so you're crazy. Ad hominem seems okay. Appeal to authority. But the president said so. Appeal to belief. Appeal to common practice. Come on, everybody's doing it. Appeal to consequences of belief. Appeal to emotion. You feel guilty. Appeal to fear. Appeal to flattery. They can get today, Tuesday. Appeal to novelty. Appeal to pity. But please, my 7 million bonus. Appeal to popularity. Appeal to ridicule. Just another conspiracy theorist. Appeal to spite. Appeal to the pity. Bandwagon. Issue nuts going all the way to stand the cup. Appeal to question. Questionable cause. You're clumsy because I cursed you. As an outlet. Burden of proof. You can be wrong. So I'm right. Stand for ad hominem. Opposition. Cat. Colorless atoms. Must be colorless. Easy cause and effect. False dilemma. You are either with us or you are with the terrorists. Division. Gambler's fallacy. Genetic fallacy. Those Asians so good at math, ignoring common law. Middle ground. By association. Muslim? You mean terrorist? Misleading visions. Here's the generalization. Terrorist? You mean Muslim? Poisoning the well. Look at that. Your mother was a hamster and your father smelled it. Post-hoc. Red herring. Hey, did you see that wild goose run through that smoke screen? Relativist fallacy. Slippery slope. Let's decrease privacy to increase security. Special pleading. Spotlight. Those naked body scanners are a great idea. The straw man argument. And 2 wrongs make a right. An eye for an eye, mofo.
Powered by quadrimethyltryptamine, a DMT entheogen, Fallacy Be Gone gets rid of fallacies so fast you'll think you're eating a red herring while begging the question to create a false dilemma between a straw man and his bandwagon. So, get Fallacy Be Gone Critical Thinking Spray today and start making sense of tomorrow.
Also available as a straw spray.
Nicholas Negroponte, welcome. Let's start with books. I really like books. I like the weight, the feel, I like to read them, I like to write them. You say the physical book is gone.
It will be in 5 years.
In 5 years?
Yes.
What makes you so confident?
Because the physical medium cannot be distributed to enough people. Think of the fact that
It's worked pretty well for 500 years.
but for a very limited number of people. When you go to Africa and let's say 500,000 people want books, you can't send the physical thing. When we ship with our laptop books to a village, we put 100 books on a laptop, but we also send 100 laptops in, each with 100 different books. So that village now has 10,000 books. This is an African village without electricity.
For those of you playing at home, you'll see that Nicholas Negroponte was educated at Le Rosier, the School of Kings.
The Greek city-states called polis were republics. Differences in wealth among their citizens were relatively small. There were no kings with the wealth to hire mercenary soldiers, so the citizens had to do their own fighting and to decide when to fight. As independent defenders of the common safety and the common interest, they demanded a role in the most important political decisions. In this way, for the first time, political life really was invented. Observe that the word political derives from the Greek word polis. Before that, no word was needed because there was no such thing. This political life came to be shared by a relatively large portion of the people, and participation in political life was highly valued by the Greeks. Such states, of course, did not need a bureaucracy, for there were no vast royal or state holdings that needed management, and not much economic surplus to support a bureaucratic class. There was no separate caste of priests. And there was very little concern, I don't mean no concern, but very little concern with life after death, which was universally important in other civilizations. In this varied, dynamic, secular, and remarkably free context, there arose for the first time a speculative natural philosophy based on observation and reason, the root of modern natural science and philosophy, free to investigate or to ignore divinity. What most sets the Greeks apart is their view of the world. Where other peoples have seen sameness and continuity, the Greeks and the heirs of their way of thinking have tended to notice disjunctions and to make distinctions. The Greek way of looking at things requires a change from the characteristic way of knowing things before the Greeks, that is to say, the use of faith, poetry, and intuition, and instead, increasingly the Greeks focused on a reliance on reason. Reason permits a continuing rational inquiry into the nature of reality. Unlike mystical insights, scientific theories cannot be arrived at by meditation alone, but require accurate observation of the world and reasoning of a kind that other human beings can criticize, analyze, modify, and correct. The adoption of this way of thinking was the beginning of the liberation and enthronement of reason, to whose searching examination the Greeks thereafter exposed everything they perceived, natural, human, and divine.
Hey man, do you have a couple minutes to run over some ideas, to collaborate?
Yeah, run.
I was just checking out this podcast, and I had a couple questions in relation to your soon-to-be-released film, Believers Beware, as it covers the concept of the New World Order, does it not?
Well, it does in fact. I cover the evidence and testimony of those aristocrats whose dream is the New World Order. People like Plato, Alexander the Great, even H.G. Wells, who wrote a book called The New World Order.
Right on, dude. So I was just listening to this Yale podcast on the iTunes where you can listen to it for free, and this guy named Donald Kagan pops into my head. He's the guy teaching a class. I'm like, I think I've heard of him before. So I find this book on my shelf in front of me. It's been sitting here for months, and it's called Of Paradise and Power, America and Europe in the New World Order by this guy named Robert Kagan. And I come to find out that they're related, and I didn't know if you're familiar with the book or not.
No, I haven't heard of it.
All right, dude. Well, check this out. There's this guy called Donald Kagan. He teaches at Yale, Aspen Institute. He's affiliated with. He got his degree from Cornell. He's got two kids. His kid Frederick is a character who also is affiliated with the Aspen Institute, the American Enterprise Institute. He likes to play war games. He teaches at West Point and he teaches at Yale. Now he has another brother named Robert, who's the author of this book. And these guys are all related with the Council on Foreign Relations. Robert gets money from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He works for the Washington Post Company sometimes, writes for the New Republic. And these guys are all fans of a guy named Leo Strauss. And the Kagan family was one of the founding families associated with neoconservatives.
They are all originators of the Project for a New American Century, which has Straussian origins in its ideology. So that's pretty interesting. What is it about Straussian ideology then that you find interesting when we click on Leo Strauss's name?
And you're looking at the brain online, right? So if I just made these changes over here and added it, then you can see the notes under Leo Strauss, right?
Yeah. So under Leo Strauss, we've got him connected to the New School for Social Research. We've got him connected to Robert Maynard Hutchins and the Great Books of the Western World. And we've got him connected to something called the Noble Lie.